Here we go.
Okay.
You didn't read them, did you?
Nope.
All right, so I thought it would be fun to do a video asking Shawna questions and interviewing her about life stuff and stuff about positive reinforcement. So here we go.
Okay.
20 questions.
And I told her I didn't want to see him ahead of time. I didn't want to know.
Yeah. I'm Jessie, for those of you that don't know me, and this is the one. One and only, Shawna Karish. Okay, so number one. If someone asked you to define yourself and what things make you unique or set you apart, how would you answer that? Or in other words, if someone asked you who Shawna Karish is, how would you answer that? And to follow up with that, talk about your strengths and even your weaknesses.
Okay, who am I? And you know, I think at the core of it, I've always been the same person, but I've gone through struggles in life, you know, so I think that has created in me a bit of a, you know, I'm growing and learning and improving and acknowledging parts of me all the time. So I think that's kind of an ever-changing, it's an evergreen question. But I do think at the core of it, what I am is I am very optimistic, positive person who sees the best in situations, people, animals, and that is the core of who I am. And that creates faults, you know, sometimes that is, you know, a little Pollyanna, too optimistic about things that maybe aren't, you know, I should be more discerning about. And so I think that is a good and a bad, but I think underneath of it all, that is who I am. And I have struggled and grown through things. So and those struggles and growth have made me very optimistic and very, I think, compassionate, actually. I think that I can see hardships. I've been through hardships, and if I had to live a life being based on the bad decisions I made, I mean, that would be horrible. So it makes it easy for me to kind of look and go, I get it. We all do things. There's a reason why we do the things we do. And the best we can do is continue to keep growing and trying to improve and be better people and better versions of ourselves each and every day. So I think that is a strength. I think another strength of mine is I tend to be rather hyper aware of things, and that actually helps me, and that's moods and changing and little shifts and things, which I think helps me with the animals and with the people, you know, so I think that helps me there. I think the downside of that, or you know, probably one of my faults would be that I am I can be a little hectic, you know, I get a little passionate and I follow that thought down the hole as opposed to going, wait, I'm more creative in that sense. And as much as I love the science, I am very sciencey, there's a part of me that is very creative and artisty, which makes it distracting. What? But
it's like a party of people over there.
And so I think that kind of thing makes it easy for me to get distracted and excited about the new thing. So that's something I always trying to work on more and getting better at. And you're helping me with that. Little plug for you. Herding cats, I am.
By the way, we're at a botanical garden in San Antonio, Texas, filming here.
And apparently they're having an after hours get together of some sort.
Yeah. Okay, so what makes you feel like you're thriving? When are you happiest and feel the most fulfilled? And it says, if she says it's when working with horses, I'm supposed to ask you which part of horses makes you happy.
And it is working with people and horses. I mean, and I feel like that's what I was put here to do. I feel like this is what I was made to do, what I'm supposed to do. I feel like every part of my life, from the marine mammals, from even before that, you know, the abuses that I struggled with as a child, through to the, you know, the marine mammals onto horses, and then continuing with horses, because where I started and where I am now are really different places. So I feel like that is the time I'm happiest, when I'm working with horses. I can be dead tired, and someone says, I'm like, oh, just wiped out. Someone says, I have a mare who won't, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? You know, and that is exciting to me to see that piece growing. And I have to say, this is all tied in with the movement of positive reinforcement. 28 years ago, nobody did it, nobody knew, nobody thought about this, and I naively thought the horse world would love it, and that's not quite been the case. But but to see it growing, is so reinforcing, because you're helping the lives of the horses, and the people are helping the lives of the horses that you affect. So I think that is it. So what part of it, I think I love the sport horse, but that's just kind of a personal thing. I think I have a real heart for the horses with really big personalities that often get misunderstood. That is one. I love those big personalities. They are being them in the truest sense. And I love that. But what I want to do is, how do I help them to be in the best situation? So I think I love those the most. And then I also love the horses, the rescue horses, the horses that have been lost. And whether it's rescue meaning rescued from a rescue, from a dire situation. But there's plenty of horses that have been so misunderstood that I feel like they can be high-end horses rescuing from, a situation when they've been misunderstood. So I think those are the parts of horses that I probably enjoy the most. But I do love it all. There I am, that optimistic me.
Okay. I think a lot of people look up to you as someone who makes your work look easy. But I know for you, it's always been a process of trial and error, where you stay lighthearted and easy with the horses, even when they become challenging. It's difficult for most people to stay so relaxed in those moments and to remain carefree. So can you talk about where that mindset comes from, and what advice you give to people to tell them not to take training, to help them to not take training so seriously?
Yeah, and I think that is a really good question. And I would have to say, that's kind of a hallmark of who I am too. Whatever the situation, that comes from that optimism and that perspective. I look at it and I think, okay, this is what we got. So this isn't all, we're not, and just like with the people, if we had to live by the mistakes we've made, or the things that we've been, kind of created in our lives, then we could never improve. But I think it's the same with horses, so a horse gets labeled as this or that or the other thing, or they've gotten really aggressive, and just to remember, it all boils down to behavior. They learn this as a defense mechanism. So even if a horse really wants to be dangerous with me, to remember, he's doing what he could do. So how can we help him? He's doing what he did to survive. And so how can we help him to get to a better place, and trying to figure that out? But it comes from that empathetic place. If I can really look at the horse and think, you're in a troubled place. But sometimes you're working with a young little colty horse and you're like, this isn't a troubled place. This is a hormone place, or whatever it might be, to still look and say, okay, but this works for you and this doesn't. So to kind of boil it down with some empathy, and also reminding myself that they didn't ask to be here. We asked. We decided this for them. So, okay, if I want you to thrive, and I don't just want them to exist to serve us, and that's a big piece of me. I don't think they're here to serve us. I feel like we're here to serve them. But we can take a horse and say, okay, but we can have a partnership that loves to show and loves to do this and loves to do that. And I think looking at those pieces with an empathetic place and realizing they're doing what they did. So how can we get there? And I think part of that is also celebrating the smallest stuff. So I want to get from A to Z, but I have to go, we got to A and a half. And it's not always the biggest place. And the best thing I can do is be joyful and celebrate that moment. And if I can help the horses to feel the joy, then they will look forward to the next time I show up. And there's a study they did where horses could tell a photo of a smiling face and a photo of the same person not smiling, and they gravitated towards a smiling person. So we know that in person they can feel all of that too bottled up tension or whatever it might, even if we're going, yeah, we're great, they're like, that's not right. So I think if we can really put ourselves in a fun place and look at it there, we can get more progress. And then I think a key there is I've done this so long that I've also been reinforced for this. So I think people that don't know and don't trust it are like, yeah. And it's hard you got to go down the line a little bit and you start to see, you know what, it's all going to be fine. But that's that optimistic perspective. Is thinking it's all going to work out. There is an answer, and we're going to get there, and we're going to do it in a way that makes us both better animals.
Okay. All right. Some people have referred to you as the UN of clicker training. How do you maintain the ability to keep peace even amongst several dissenting opinions?
Well, and this is going to sound like a broken record, but it still boils down to that empathy. So somebody comes along and says, well, I just need this, and I need to get this done, and this is what I need to do. And then, and this is wishy-washy, we don't like this. And so to slow down and say, I get it. I understand where they're coming from. I understand maybe they don't know what we're doing. They don't understand what positive reinforcement really is. They've seen it done poorly. I mean, that happens a fair share. And so, yeah, thank you. And so it happens a fair share. So if we can't stop somebody from walking through the camera. We yelled at him and beat him.
You couldn't tell what we were doing.
But if I can kind of see their side too, and one of the things I know for absolute 100 for sure, digging in and going toe to toe with people never wins them over. So, and it's the same with the horses. You know what I mean? That never wins them over. They may toe the line for a bit, but underneath it all, it's not making a better relationship. So as we want people to broaden and open and be open to things, we need to give them a safe place to learn. So if I go out there and say what you're doing is wrong, and now I've got them I could have cognitive dissonance firstly, where they're thinking, well then I have to disrespect that because this is what I've done.
Yeah.
Or it could be that it is, they also, if they go, well what else would I do? They need to feel safe coming to the person. And if I've kind of made had animosity about it, then it's never going to create that. So I think really, because I walk a line between you're kind of extreme, we shouldn't even ride the horses, to showing the horses is fine for all horses, so we have kind of the extremes, and I think we can show horses and have them be happy, and we can, and ride them, but it takes a certain amount of care and thoughtfulness. So it really is, I think, again, that empathy and trying to think of the other side and finding ways to work together. So I think that's also a piece of it. If we say, don't do this thing, well, we can't just take that away and not say, here's another thing we can try. So by offering up kind of other things to try and then reminding about the science behind it, because it's all based in science. I didn't make this up. But by reminding about the science, a lot of times we can create, we can open their minds a little bit, and they might try and experiment, and then we can be there to support and help them through it. So the queen of short answers am I.
It's perfect. Okay, having personally observed you on a daily basis, I've found you to be mostly optimistic. So how do you maintain that optimism even in those times when life gets a bit harder? And what are some things that you do to get yourself back on track?
Yeah, and I definitely have my down times. I know one thing that I need for me is I need to have physically down time, because I'm an introvert, and that doesn't mean I'm shy. It means I need to get away from people for a while and recharge my batteries. So I try to build that in so I don't let myself get so drained. Because what I find for me, and I don't know how everybody is, but if I get too tired, everything seems overwhelming, and everything it seems hard to do, and it doesn't seem, and I can let that become an overwhelming thought for me. So I try to, keep myself rested enough, and doing what I do. I love when we're out on the road and we're doing our things, and so that fills me to a certain degree. But when I'm done, I put out a truckload of energy and have to stop and relax. So I think that helps. But I know it helps. That's not even a think. I know that it helps me to get better. So when I start to feel pessimistic, and there's things all of a sudden you have 5 things coming up, and I think that's too much. I just can't process this right now. And I take that break, and I allow myself to take that break and say, it's okay. We're 2 people, really. But it's just a small little group. It's just a little tiny group trying to do things. You know what I mean? So I sometimes have to realize it's okay. Just take a break and then go one step at a time. I've been sober for nearly 16 years now, over 16 years. And so I have, one of the things, it's one step at a time, one day at a time. And really it's a philosophy that it helps when I feel overwhelmed, take my break and then come back and think, okay, just work through one at a time. But resting a lot of times helps me to have the energy to do that. And then the other thing I think, and this is, I'm not going to suggest this is the way to get there, but I think being through so much as a young girl, so much adversity, to survive, I needed to look at the bright side and be optimistic about things. But I also learned through that a lot of hard things have happened in my life, and I continue to survive, and I continue to grow because of them, and not, instead of, letting it stay overwhelming, because it's overwhelming. I'm not like I can just all go clear straight through it, but to recognize I have gotten through so many other pieces of life that have been, done things that are hard to think about and to remember, or been through things that are hard to think about and remember. But I've always come through, and I'm still thriving. I'm not just surviving. I'm thriving, and so I think to remember that this is today, and tomorrow I could just work on one little piece and get a little better. So I know that it is sometimes hard to do when I'm in the throes of the darker periods where you're like, it just is too much. But really, it helps me to get out and just go, okay, let's go see horses. And if I could just see the horses and play with Henley and the horses and Hadley and Santino, even if I just have to sit there and mope, it can feel helpful, because the next thing you know, I'm doing more than that. So I think that getting back to what really I love helps me, and rest helps me.
Yeah. And to put this in a little context, we have been traveling from one end of the country to the other since August, September.
Yeah.
Something
Coming
like
up
that,
to a year.
2021, and it's now May 2022. And we have done like 18 or 20 clinics or something like that, or events.
Yeah.
And we have about 20 more scheduled, and a lot of them are like back-to-back weekends through the next 3 or 4 months.
And it makes me happy.
Yeah. Okay, where was I?
Poor Jessie.
Okay, what lesson have you learned in life that you wish you had learned sooner?
Oh my gosh.
There's just one.
Yeah, because there's like 50.
Yeah, don't come.
I think the biggest lesson I've learned, and probably the most grounding, is to, when I feel something, to stop and look for its origin. So it's an emotional thing, and I grew up where we shoved everything away and we put on a smiley face and went on when it wasn't great. And so one of the things, when I start to feel something, to stop myself in my tracks and go, why is this? So instead of reacting in some way, and sometimes it's an off the rails kind of thing, you're like, where did that even come from? Instead of having the dysfunctional processing of thoughts, I think the biggest thing I've learned is to try to stop that and think, where does this come from, and how should I deal with it? So if I can slow that down, then I can not have dysfunctional reactions and doing things that are not going to help it. Yeah. They're just to hide the pain, to mask the pain. So I think that would be the biggest thing I wish I learned when I was 4.
Okay, don't go on. It won't be good. Okay, what has been your most emotional or fulfilling moment or part of life with horses?
Well, there's obviously been a whole lot. There's professional things that have happened, with John and Beezy and Judgment. That was really an awesome thing to see it growing, to now have thousands of people in groups. That's all amazing. But I think one of the things that was really significant for me, and it was just a moment, it was just a thing somebody said that was, to me, it felt like it was the piece I'd like to see everybody think about. And I know you know this story of, there was a guy who was a body worker, and he was down in Southern Pines, and he worked with a lot of professionals. And this gal came along who was very Buck Brannaman, Western kind of that ilk. And she came to a clinic, and she, to my surprise, really embraced the positive reinforcement. I thought, oh, these people don't like the positive reinforcement much. And she really embraced it, took it on. Well, that body worker would see her, with the side bucket and doing things, and would say, feeding your ponies, and mock her for that. And then he went and he saw a demo one day that was put on, and it was, it was put on by a feed company I was working with.
So you did the demo.
I did the demo, yes. And the next day, this man who's booked up one side and down the other, and charges a lot, works with a lot of professionals, was at all the lessons I had with his clients. So he came and he was, all of a sudden, he saw the demo and he realized, wait, this is not what I thought it was. And then he was the one, and she went to him, the gal that got mocked.
As this happens with most people that watch it.
Yes, it really is. It really is. If I can have 20 minutes, you're going to at least walk away saying there's something to this, whether you're ready for it or not. But he, so then he started taking it on. He was doing it, and she went to him and said, "So you're feeding your ponies," and just gave it right back to him. And he said, "You know what? I feel like I'm 13 again. I'm loving the time with my horses, and I'm getting serious things done." And that's what I think is so important. We can have fun and get serious things done. Marine mammals, we're expected to get high criteria, but they got all their food each and every day, regardless of what they did or didn't do. They got all their social interactions each and every day, regardless of what they did or didn't do. So it really wasn't about, we had to make it fun. It had to be, when we showed up, they're like, the humans are here. And we can do that with our horses. And I think that kind of summed up, which I wish everybody could feel and really recognize. So that was kind of a big day, and it put it in a reinforcing context of seeing it happen outside of just my beliefs.
And I like that it wasn't like some big event or you won something or whatever, judgment won this or that. It was someone said a pony, or he had this feeling like he was a kid again and had a pony.
Yes.
That's cool. Okay. We all know that one of the major premises of positive reinforcement is to keep them under threshold while creating a happy and willing partner. How do you know when your horse is ready to go to the next step? And how would you best describe the feeling a horse is giving off to you about their energy level?
Okay, and that's...
Hang on one sec, because you have said multiple times that you can kind of feel what they're doing more so than you would even see it.
Yes. And I think that it is, and I do. And I think, honestly, I think that's a little bit from my childhood. I had to keep myself safe at, 3 and 4 years old. I figured out very quickly I could read a room, and it was not overt, so I think I honed those skills. Those skills are there for everybody, but I learned very early to rely on them and use them. So when I got around to animals, I kind of was a little more used to going there. So I think that helps me quite a bit. I can be walking, not even looking at a horse, and the horse doesn't do anything different. I'm like, something changed. And then you recognize something happened or whatever it might be. So I think that's something to keep working on and keep developing that skill. But I think, what was the beginning of this question?
How do you know when your horse is ready to go to the next step?
Yes. And one of the things I think is a key piece, we talk about this all the time, one of the things we like to do is keep raising that criteria. So the game is afoot. It's not like, wah, 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 feed me my food. We keep them engaged in the game, and that's been a term that's been referred to as contra freeloading, but essentially animals have shown that it's more reinforcing to play the game, that they will go try a behavior over just getting the free food. So it's a process we know goes on, and one that we want to embrace and get them to. So raising the criteria all the time is an important part of it. And I don't always know exactly when, but if I feel like it's clearly happening, so the behavior is happening, and it's happening quickly and brightly. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, I guess, because then I'm like, you're not thinking this is the greatest behavior yet. So I'll kind of keep sticking to it. And it may not just be we work that, but work different things and get back to it. Like think, okay, work this and that until that behavior, if they're showing up, they're doing it, they're giving it to me solid all the time. Then I think, and with a really engaged demeanor. And then I think, now it's time to move up a little bit. But you know what? We start moving up right away a little bit all the time. And I think it is part of what keeps them engaged. So all I can really do is ask the question. Because they're all such individuals that for some horses, they're going to need to move along faster, and they will, and they're ready to. And sometimes I think they're ready to, and I say, can you do this? And they go, nope. And I go, okay, back we go. And so asking the question, I just ask, and if it doesn't happen, that's okay. And I go right back to something easier or an easier step of it, because I also want them to learn, and this is hard for some horses, but I want them to learn that having the wrong answer isn't the worst thing in the world. When I think a lot of them, if they don't get the right answer, it feels kind of scary, like I might get corrected, or I might. So I want them to realize you can try something, no big deal. We tried it, you didn't get the right answer, move on. I'm going to help you find the right answer. So really, it is a trial and error, because I work with a lot of horses I do not know, and so I have to very quickly go, okay, how do I assess who you are, how you think, how can I help you think, and then how can I help the people think? But it just is trial and error. So it's not. I wish it was, this is the recipe, but it's not quite that.
That would not be your nature anyway. Okay, why do you feel it's so important to get a horse to a place where they're beginning to become inquisitive? And why does it matter if we even ever create problem solvers?
Yes, problem solvers to me are I think that's the basis of it all. When we have horses, and it kind of touches on what we just said about wanting horses to think, because there's a study that was done in the late 60s. They gave animals free food, then they taught them to hit a lever for food, and they found that they tend to ignore the free food and tend to go to the lever for food. They tried it with different species. So we know there's a piece of them that like solving the puzzle. But I think sometimes with traditional training, we have taught them the wrong answer means a correction. And for some horses, it can feel not good, So I think that we have kind of taught them, we're going to make it very clear exactly what we want them to do. So when we say, can you touch the target? It's just right here, but they're like, I just will ignore it, and that's challenging.
Yeah, and I think that's my biggest awakening in having watched all the horses that we've been working with, is the fact that their body language is sometimes so minute that you can barely pick it up.
Yes.
And they are telling us things all the time, and we just don't even see it.
Exactly.
I grew up with traditional training, so for me, it's like, wow, even that little hesitation and that, as they're walking forward or whatever, that is something.
Yes.
We need to pay attention to all of it.
Yes, and that's a really good point, because it's body language, and that's part of that essence of what you're getting. Sometimes I'm not seeing it, and I just feel just a slight tension that, it's hard to define what it was. But sometimes it is very much a lot of nervousness can look very hesitant, and that we don't always interpret that as being nervous, and yet it is. It's a big sign of saying, I'm reluctant, I'm uncertain, I'd rather not. And so to get them, Minty was one of the earliest quitters I worked with. We were working at John and Beezy's. He was a year and a half, and I was trying to get him to touch the target. It's one of the earliest things. The horse in the paddock next to him, who I wasn't working with, was trying to reach over and touch the target. And nobody, and yet he wasn't. He's like, I'm just gonna leave. And you're like, and so his nature was rather, it's just a little too hard. So to get him engaged. Now, if you watch that video, the horse remembers after 7 years, clicker training thing. I don't even remember the title, but it's Minty. And that horse is bright and engaged and wanting to do all of it. And it would be hard to imagine that horse once upon a time was like, nah, that's too hard. So looking for those little tiny tries, those moments where he might go, I'm just not gonna, and then he even looks at it and I go, that's it. And starting with those little pieces and building upon that and recognizing their body language. Oh, his chin just got a little tight. Ooh, he just walked away. All those things mean so much more, and they're having conversations all the time, and we haven't really been taught to pay attention to them. And the more horses you work, honestly, the more you kind of get the idea, okay, for this one, your tight chin is always, that's it. Bugsy had his little face all twisted in a knot, and that's who he was. That was his exploration. So trying to figure that out, but opening them up as problem solvers is we want them to be there with us. And if we come to something we don't know, we're going down a line and we're getting kind of not a great distance. I want a partner who's there and says, I got this, as opposed to them going, well, you didn't say anything. And I'm like, and I all the time we're learning new things instead of them sitting there and saying, you need to tell me exactly what we want, which we can with the clicker. But I want them to kind of be going, let's see, there's an answer in here somewhere. Let me try this. Let me try that. Let me try this. And if we get that, that is a partnership. Now this is a game changer. Now they're invested in the training. They're invested in the outcome of the training because there's something in it for them. And then the partnership really starts to form. And that trust that goes with the partnership, it gives me chills at this moment right now in this 100-degree weather.
100 degrees.
Yes, I have chills because that partnership is, when you have that is a horse with heart. That's a horse who's with you and looks forward to you being there and looks forward to learning new things. And they're going to make the learning be so much faster. It relaxes, it takes attention out of it. It has them trying things. It has them remembering little pieces. It's phenomenal. It is the game changer in this relationship. And I can say it till I'm blue in the face, but until people experience it, it's really hard. And I've worked with Olympic riders who have said, I thought we were close before, but this is crazy. We're so much, and they already did have a good relationship, and it makes it stronger. Or even just the endorphins and dopamines that are part of the process create a horse who's just happier and more like, well, okay, let's try. So it's hard to put that into words, but it is, and you've experienced it firsthand, going, yeah, this helps get this done or this done, but actually, it's, so it's so fun to see.
Okay. Why do you feel it's important not to try to control horses? As a trainer, as a traditional trainer, for me, the less you're doing on their backs, especially as they're first being started under saddle, the better they do to adapting to new information you're teaching them. For an example, the softer my hands and legs are, the less resistance I have. Can you talk about resistance and traditional training versus positive reinforcement, which tends to be a much more free process?
Yes, I think, and it kind of goes back to the digging the heels in. You know what I mean? If we have an idea and we're thinking this is what it's going to be, and we get harder about it, we're not teaching them to be free thinkers. We're not teaching them to kind of joyfully remember what we're doing and want to do it again. So I think when we get hard and controlling, but you think about us as people, nobody likes to be micromanaged. I don't know anyone who likes to be micromanaged and told to do this, do it like that, no, not like that, like this, what are you doing, what are you doing, what are you doing? There's a lot of growth when somebody says, hey, can we get this done? And then they kind of let you try it. And they may come in and say, okay, you know what we need to do? Maybe tweak it, a little like this and a little like that. And I think that's how training should be. But when we have problem solvers, we can then say, hey, can we begin the process of maybe thinking about collection? Maybe we get one cue, another cue, and they're like, and you go, that's a little piece in the right direction. But you let them become an active part of it. Yeah. Keeping in mind that the contra freeloading, that there's something in us that likes to play the game, and it's in them. There's something in us that likes to solve the puzzle. There's something in us that likes to earn the reinforcement. So it's not so hard that it's difficult. We have lots of success, and we teach them through lots and lots of success. They're like, I'm good at problem solving, and we want that, so you can set that up and teach them that. But I think it's the same thing. If we don't say, we're doing this together, if it's I'm just up here being your micromanaging boss, I think it feels very counterintuitive for them. And horses are, a lot of animals like to run and move, and so I think it creates such a different piece to the relationship when we trust them. And I think it does have to do with trust. We say, I trust you. We're going to do, what are you going to do with this? And if they're kind of goey, instead of saying, stop, say, okay, well, let's go for a little bit and see if we can't slow down a little, reinforce that, but kind of listening to them. It's part of hearing what they need and what they value and what is necessary in that moment or what they're thinking in that moment. It gives us so much more information when we help them to be a part of it. And it's just so much more agreeable and happy and as well as effective,